The story takes place in a second-hand house recently purchased by a young couple, Charles and Kelly, who just got married. Shortly after they moved in, Charles's sister-in-law, Maya, came to stay temporarily because she was going through a separation from her husband. On her very first day there, Maya grew suspicious about the house because its price was only half of the market value. The couple then told her that the previous owner was actually a deranged serial killer who owned several houses, each equipped with hidden cameras. He would rent these houses out to tenants and secretly watch them daily, waiting for the right moment to break in and kidnap or kill them. Hearing this, Maya was startled and said, "Isn't this a haunted house? And with cameras everywhere, how could anyone feel safe living here?" Charles reassured her that no murders had ever happened in this particular house, no cameras had been found, and the real estate agency had thoroughly inspected it. Besides, that deranged owner had long since died, so there was nothing to worry about. That night, the three of them watched a documentary about the creepy landlord together. After a while, Maya lost interest and stood up, saying she was going to take a shower. Charles, worried the water heater might be broken, went to check the storage room on the first floor. While inspecting, Charles accidentally discovered a hidden door concealed in the wall. When he opened it, he found a secret room inside. The realtor had said they'd thoroughly checked the house, so how could there be such a surprise? Curious, Charles stepped into the secret room and saw a safe. He tried several random codes, but none opened it. Fumbling around, he switched on the light and noticed a plastic sheet covering something in front of him. Walking over and lifting the sheet, he found a computer. Charles tried to turn it on, and to his shock, the screen displayed surveillance footage from all around the house. Suddenly, he saw Maya enter the bathroom and couldn't help but watch the screen, even seeing her undress. Terrified, he quickly shut off the monitor. The images he'd just seen made him feel both excited and uneasy. After leaving the secret room, he felt distracted and out of sorts. Maya noticed his odd behavior and asked what was wrong. Feeling guilty under her concerned gaze, Charles decided to tell her about the surveillance. Before he could say a word, a shadow suddenly appeared outside the window, startling Maya. The three of them went to the door to check but saw no one. Still shaken, Maya stayed on edge, and Charles decided it was best to keep the surveillance secret for now. The next day, just before leaving, Charles exchanged a glance with Maya and suddenly felt something stir inside him. Unable to resist, he sneaked back into the secret room, turned on the computer, and pulled up last night's surveillance footage to secretly watch Maya shower. Charles's heart had never raced so fast in his life. He was completely engrossed when suddenly the air freshener on the wall sprayed a burst of gas, startling him and snapping him back to reality. He cursed himself for being so depraved and began to feel guilty, but having tasted the thrill, he didn't want to give it up. As he struggled with his conscience, a new idea struck him. Not long after, Charles started renting out the house and had many prospective tenants come by, but he wasn't satisfied with any, until two female college students showed up. He immediately smiled and decided to rent to them on the spot. That's right, Charles's plan was that if spying on his sister-in-law was wrong, then he'd spy on strangers instead. However, his wife Kelly was a bit upset when she discovered these two girls had poor credit histories and worried they might not pay rent. Charles reassured her, saying, "We were poor when we first graduated too. Luckily, we had a kind landlord back then, so now that we're landlords ourselves, how could we not pay that kindness forward?" Kelly couldn't argue and had no choice but to agree. On the day the girls moved in, Charles was busy helping carry their things and even grilled some barbecue for the two college students. When Kelly came home and saw Charles being so enthusiastic, she sneered inwardly, thinking, "You've never cooked a day in your life since we got married, and now that two young girls have moved in, suddenly you're a top chef?" Kelly was a woman who cared about appearances, so she didn't confront him directly but just gave a few casual remarks before going upstairs. Knowing she was a bit annoyed, Charles followed her up to comfort her. Kelly didn't argue, she just said to have fun and that she would mind her own business. Though he cared about his wife's feelings, Charles secretly felt pleased that there were two young female tenants in the house. However, there was a small problem. They lived upstairs, the girls lived on the first floor, and the secret room was also on the first floor, so Charles had to sneak out the window and climb down like a thief to get into the secret room. Although it was inconvenient, every time he saw the female tenants appear on the surveillance screen, he felt it was worth it. One time, while watching the footage, a spider crawled onto the keyboard. He tried to blow it away but ended up sneezing from the dust. Just then, one of the girls passed by the storage room and stopped when she heard the noise. Charles was so scared he barely breathed, but luckily the girl thought she had imagined it and didn't pay attention. Knowing the soundproofing was poor, Charles covered the secret room with soundproof foam when no one was home so that even yelling wouldn't be heard. Meanwhile, Kelly kept watching the documentary about the deranged landlord and became increasingly convinced that things weren't so simple, that the landlord might still be alive. The documentary said his car caught fire and was destroyed when he fled, but the police never confirmed his identity through DNA. What worried Kelly even more was that a white van, the same model the landlord used to drive, was frequently seen around the neighborhood. For safety, Kelly installed surveillance cameras at the front door. When Charles found out, he told her not to overthink it, saying that even if the landlord wasn't dead, there was no reason for him to come back here. Seeing Charles's nonchalance, Kelly felt a bit disappointed. After a while, Charles's desires grew more twisted. One day, when the female tenants were out, he sneaked into their room and started rummaging around and touching things. Suddenly, one of the girls returned and caught him in the act. Panicked, Charles claimed he was there to fix the water heater, but the girl didn't believe him and sternly said, "No matter what, you should have at least knocked first. This is illegal trespassing, do you understand?" Charles could only keep apologizing and fled in embarrassment. That night, Kelly received complaints from the female tenants saying that Charles often came into their room. Charles's heart tightened, fearing the situation was getting out of hand, and he quickly defended himself, insisting he hadn't done anything wrong. Fortunately, Kelly's mind was preoccupied with the deranged landlord, so she didn't press the issue further and just reminded him to behave himself. The next day, the two girls went on a trip, and although Charles lost his spying target, he still went to the secret room to watch the surveillance footage. Wanting to check on Kelly's concerns, he noticed a white van frequently appearing nearby, and even saw someone using a laser pointer to interfere with the front door camera. Charles began to suspect that maybe the deranged landlord was still alive and had come back, or perhaps someone was playing a prank. Just as he was wondering, he suddenly saw Kelly searching the house for hidden cameras and finally find one in the bathroom, which she immediately took down. Watching this, Charles felt uneasy, thinking, why did she even remove the most important camera? Now that the evidence was right in front of them, Kelly decided to call the police. Charles hurriedly tried to stop her, saying the device might not even be a camera. But Kelly was firm, believing they couldn't let this go and that having the police investigate was the only way to feel safe. Just then, Maya rushed in, saying her husband had discovered she was hiding there and would definitely come looking for her tonight, maybe even get violent. Seeing Maya so panicked, Kelly put the camera situation aside for the moment and decided to go out with her to lay low. After the three left, Charles's brother indeed showed up. Seeing that no lights were on inside, he cursed loudly outside the door. Suddenly, he noticed a green laser dot on the door. Angry and trying to find whoever was playing a prank, he was suddenly knocked out. When Charles returned home, he saw on the surveillance footage that someone had attacked and dragged away his brother. Terrified, he stumbled back into the air freshener on the wall, causing its casing to fall off. That's when he discovered there was a camera hidden inside the air freshener. It turned out that while Charles had been spying on others, he himself was also being watched. And besides the deranged landlord, who else could pull off something like this? With things escalating so far, Charles should have told Kelly about the surveillance and called the police, but he didn't. Partly because he couldn't break his voyeuristic habit, and partly because he was afraid his own wrongdoing would be exposed. Charles guessed that the other person must be after something inside the safe and thought that handing it over might settle everything. So, he arranged to meet Johnny at his house through the surveillance system. It seemed Charles no longer cared about his brother's fate. Soon enough, the deranged landlord Johnny showed up. The moment they met, Charles revealed a dial interface on the screen, hinting that if Johnny made any sudden moves, he would immediately call the police. Charles told Johnny he could take whatever he wanted but that Charles would pretend nothing happened and even erase the surveillance records. They both went into the secret room together, where Johnny opened the safe and took out a large bunch of keys. Charles said, "Now that you have what you came for, let's go our separate ways and stay out of each other's business." Johnny nodded in agreement. Unexpectedly, one of the female tenants suddenly returned, making Johnny tense and even sparking murderous intent. Charles hurriedly urged him not to act rashly and told him to leave the matter to him. Charles stepped outside to convince the girl to leave quickly. Seeing him, the girl furiously shouted, "You pervert, how dare you show up here?" While taking the scolding, Charles desperately pleaded with her to go. But the situation grew strange, the girl refused to listen and instead demanded Charles explain everything clearly. Just as Charles was about to hint that there was a murderer in the house, Johnny suddenly appeared holding a hammer and knocked both of them down. Hours later, Charles woke up tightly bound to a chair in the secret room, unable to stand. Through the surveillance cameras, he saw Johnny still inside the house, and the girl was tied up in the living room. Although she could still move her legs, the door was nailed shut and wouldn't open. The girl tried to escape but was caught by Johnny, who struck her repeatedly on her right side with the hammer, killing her instantly. Watching this brutal scene, Charles thought the deranged landlord was merciless, realizing his own chances were grim and that he should have called the police earlier. Not long after, he saw Kelly drive home. Anxious, Charles tried to warn his wife about the danger, but his mouth was gagged and the secret room was soundproof, so all he could do was helplessly watch Kelly walk step by step into peril. After arriving home and not seeing Charles, Kelly suspected he was doing something wrong on the first floor. She hesitated at the staircase whether to go down to find him, but then smelled something burning. It was her burnt pot, so she hurried to turn off the stove. When she tried to open the door to ventilate, she found the doorframe nailed shut, the door jammed and impossible to open. Panic swept over Kelly as she realized this was a usual trick of the deranged landlord. She grabbed a kitchen knife to protect herself, but just as she held it, Johnny suddenly appeared and attacked her. They tumbled beside the table, and the knife fell to the floor. Johnny raised his hammer, aiming to smash Kelly's head, but luckily she dodged skillfully. The two struggled fiercely, but Kelly was no match and was eventually tied up by Johnny. As Johnny prepared to drag Kelly into the secret room, he used a drill to remove the nails from the wall and opened the sealed door. Just as the door swung open, Johnny was suddenly hit hard on the back of his head. It was Maya who had returned and sensed something was wrong. Maya grabbed a baseball bat and swung it repeatedly, forcing Johnny to retreat. She entered the house and saw Kelly tied up, stopping to check on her. At that moment, Johnny seized the opportunity and stabbed Maya in the abdomen with the drill. They struggled and fell to the ground, the drill slipping from Johnny's hand. Johnny then grabbed Maya by the neck with his arm, trying to suffocate her. Meanwhile, Kelly picked up a screw from the floor and used it to cut through the tape binding her. Maya was already too weak to move. Channeling her fury into strength, Kelly suddenly lunged forward, knocking the gasping Johnny to the ground and grabbing the drill to stab it fiercely into his eyes. As blood splattered everywhere, the deranged landlord finally died. Maya survived after emergency treatment. Kelly, as a survivor, gave a TV interview, expressing relief that she and Maya escaped with their lives, though her husband Charles remained missing. No one expected that Charles was still trapped in the secret room, doomed to die slowly in front of the surveillance monitor, truly a case of poetic justice.